Hello and welcome back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, a podcast about all things travel. Today, we're talking about Hong Kong. It's Charlie Bosco here, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend, Traveller Tattooed, TT, who's down in Denver and just got back from Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China, which is the same status as Macau, but it was governed by Britain for 150 years until the handover in 1997. It covers an area of 1,100 square kilometres, and it's got a population of 7.5 million, so it's the fourth most densely populated region in the world. And TT, as we mentioned, you just got back. Does it feel the fourth most densely populated place in the world?
It feels pretty populated, but it didn't feel unyieldy jammed. And it's also I think it's the highest life expectancy of anywhere in the world.
Really?
I think so. Unless I'm thinking of Birmingham.
Birmingham, England.
Yes.
Yeah, it's notorious for its quality of life. Yeah, with clean air and fresh food. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely no fried crap. Yeah.
But I think it is the top one. Someone can look that up for us, I guess.
I always thought it was some tiny island off Japan where all they eat is rice and raw fish.
Yeah, maybe.
But
yeah, it was pretty crowded, but it wasn't like the subways were fine. Like it wasn't hard to navigate. I didn't think the streets were crazy crowded. One thing I liked about it wasn't like jammed with tourists. I think people go there for business, but I don't think you don't really hear a lot of people going to Hong Kong on vacation. So I think that maybe contributed to it not feeling as busy.
Yeah, I don't get the impression it's somewhere that many people go just for no reason. Actually, a little bit of history. Japan held Hong Kong during the Second World War, 41 to 45, and then in the second part of the last century, it became one of the main financial centers in the world. Apparently, it's now got the second most billionaires of any city in the world after New York. Does it feel affluent?
Oh, yes.
Universally?
Yes,
I mean, did you walk through bad areas, or is it one of those places where there don't appear to be any bad areas?
No, it's not. I would say Singapore has no bad areas. Hong Kong has places that aren't quite as wealthy looking. I didn't go everywhere in the city, of course. This is just massive, but in the main part, I've never seen so many expensive purses and just people wearing things that were just very, very fancy and expensive. I'd say even more than I saw in Singapore. So there's a lot of money there.
And do the people look affluent? Sounds ridiculous, but we've done an episode on China, and you can go back and find that in the Opposites Abroad feed. Fair to say the Chinese government didn't come out of that episode all that well. I can't imagine Xi Jinping will be losing any sleep over our opinion, but they didn't come out of it super well. But in China, people, it's not a smart dressing place. It's not like walking around an Italian city where basically everybody looks smart and crisp. What's Hong Kong like on that front?
It did seem affluent, and the people did look affluent. I thought that people were well dressed. It was really cool fashion watching. People were very fashionable. I mean, I wouldn't say it's Milan or Paris, but compared to China, definitely. And I actually thought it was more probably fashion forward than in some ways even than Tokyo. It's interesting. It's an interesting place because it's by, I guess, genetics. The people are more Chinese that live there, but they don't consider themselves Chinese. They consider themselves Hong Kongers, and they speak Cantonese, which they do in that part of or that area around China, anyways. But it's just very interesting, especially being British rule for 150 years. Everybody speaks English. It is very affluent. You can definitely see the British and Western influence throughout. And I was reading a thing that it was one of the few places in the world that there was no movement to get rid of the British. Like the British had basically signed an agreement with China that they were leasing it, and when the time was up, China took it. But the locals didn't. At least my understanding is weren't thrilled to be part of China, and it's going to be interesting to see what China continues to do at that place.
Yeah, because I visited. I was only 13, 97, just aged myself. So I went 6 months pre-handover. We, for a little context, if you're wondering why a 13-year-old gets to go to Hong Kong, my uncle lives in New Zealand, and we got to visit as a kind of trip of a lifetime was to go to New Zealand when we were teenagers. And we stopped and we had 5 days in Hong Kong. So my memories of it are through the eyes of a 13-year-old, but I remember watching the handover on TV. Can't have been long later, probably a matter of weeks, because I think we went in late 97, and I think sentiment was that they would have liked to not be handing over power to China. Both the British felt that way and the locals.
Yeah, I would. That's kind of the sense I got from a couple comments like some salespeople made and about the government, that there's some worry about China.
Well, I think China made a lot of promises about the fact that it would basically allow it to be much more autonomous than they've gone on to allow it to be.
Yeah, and I went to the history museum, and it was really interesting because the first half of it was just horrible, and it was basically all Chinese propaganda. Like it almost reminded me of like one of our North Korean museums. Like it was just super flowery, ridiculous language about progress and how great China is. These massive Chinese flags, pictures of life-size smiling people, and it was really awful, and with no history of Hong Kong at all. And then the second half of the museum was the history of Hong Kong tied to California, when it came to a lot of people from Hong Kong going for the gold rush, and how a lot of Chinese Americans are tied ancestrally to Hong Kong. And I thought that part was actually super interesting, but maybe the Chinese government hasn't got to ruining that part of the museum yet.
Yeah, well, I suspect the first part of the museum wasn't there until 1997. I certainly don't think the people celebrated their link to China too much before they were forced to.
Yes.
And I think it'd be fair to say, again, without wishing to go into the specific of the politics, that it's been, whilst I wouldn't be any great defender of the British Empire and the wrongs done by the British Empire, I think Hong Kong was one place where they were an awful lot better off pre-97 than they have been post-97.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not part of the British Empire like you are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm trying to be modest here. I mean, yeah, I mean, if we could have just had the whole world, imagine how good it could have been.
Well, the sun never sets, does it?
No. My dad actually remembers going to school with the maps, and the red was the empire, and the whole map was red, basically, when he was going to school.
I would encourage anybody listening to this to Google the height of the British Empire.
It was
and look at a map online. It is unbelievable how this little tiny island basically controlled almost the entire world. It's really incredible.
This is a little tiny island that has now decided to be cut off from the entire world via Brexit. So we've gone from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, everyone's trying to leave the weather there, I think, is why they've started making ships and sailing away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the EU sailed away. Anyway, you know what? Maybe one day we could just do a Brexit episode, and you can just sit back and I can just let rip on Brexit. But there we go.
Okay. I'll ask the questions on that one.
Yeah, exactly. But people listening to this, if they are going to Hong Kong for business or they just want to check it out like you did, what are they going to notice? What's it like?
I'd say they'll notice it's safe. I mean, it's such a huge city. I thought it was clean. I didn't see trash. I think I saw maybe one homeless person. It was a lot nicer than I expected.
Were you expecting it to be kind of Beijing, Shanghai, where it's terrible pollution and a little bit dirty?
I went to Hong Kong as a kid, just like you did. But I'm older than you, so it was in the 80s. And my memories of Hong Kong and Singapore are all blended together as a kid, and I don't really remember any separation of the two. so I couldn't really remember that much about it. My mom was telling me that it was hilly. That's about all she really remembered of it too. So I was surprised because I did expect it to be like what you picture a big industrial Chinese city, and it wasn't that way at all. It was actually really, really nice.
More akin to Tokyo, Taipei, Seoul than China.
I would say so, yeah. Modern, not the crazy architecture like you see in some Chinese cities or in Dubai or something, but big skyscrapers. The subway system works great and is very easy. Some things I thought were very strange, like you need a lot of cash. The subway system is basically cash only, unless you go wait for a booth to have like somebody help you. But the machines only take cash. And when I was at the hotel, the concierge said, you probably expect that you don't need cash here, but this is still a cash system. So I went to the lobby and exchanged a couple $100s for cash and used it for different things. But to me, that was so strange because a city as wealthy as an industrialized Hong Kong, I just expected it to be credit cards for everything.
Do you think that's to do with their continued attempt to reject the Chinese state and
I have
not
no
use
idea.
Because WeChat, we've talked about it in our episode about the Chinese cities. WeChat is how you pay for everything, you communicate with everyone. I wonder if that's the Hong Kong rejection of China.
Yeah, I have no idea. But I have a buddy who's going to Hong Kong in a couple weeks, and I saved, a little bit of money for him to give him so he'd have some cash because it's just not something you expect. I'm at the point where, years ago I would try to get cash before I went to a country and at least have some, and then I would get more there. Now I go to whole countries and I never even get any cash ever.
It's crazy. Hey?
So it was just, it's just changed so much, and it was so weird needing it in a place that is so modern. But I will say, when you think about, you asked about like people watching and fashion and things like that. If you do go to Hong Kong especially as a guy, it's the place to get a suit made.
More than German Street in London, which we've talked about on here.
Yeah, I think there's London, Milan, but I got a custom suit made in Hong Kong at a place called Empire Tailors. It's been around for years. It was about $600, and they made it basically pulling off fabric off of a shelf and made it right there. It's a bargain. I mean, you can't go to a cheap suit place in the United States and get a suit for much around there. And it's completely custom. I got to pick out my fabrics. I got to pick out the lining. I got it sized, and then I went back at the end of the trip for the final fitting and took it home with me. So that's an absolute. I think it's almost a must if you're there to get a suit made.
How often do you wear a suit?
Almost every day.
Do you wear a suit that often? I own a really nice suit that I like wearing, and I'm averaging once every 3 years. So
you should wear it for our next podcast so I can see it.
I should do, yeah. Yeah. Just shorts on the lower half, and then you can see the suit on the top
That's right.
half.
I generally wear a suit Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I dress down a little bit with a sport coat on Friday. So I wear a suit pretty often.
Damn it! I wanted an excuse to wear my suit.
Yeah,
can't you have some special occasions so I can get my suit out?
Yes, we can certainly do that.
And you talked about how your suit was cheap. What's the cost of visiting like? What's the cost of living like for people on holiday?
I don't know what cost of living is like for the locals, but I thought it was reasonable. Food was okay priced.
What are we talking? Kind of US prices, cheaper?
US maybe a little bit cheaper. I did a couple things. I did some restaurant stuff, just like normal restaurants where locals go. I did 3 Michelin star fine dining for lunch, and it wasn't crazy expensive, I thought, for what it was. I also went to Disneyland, and I thought the food there was a lot cheaper than Disneyland would be, and food in Disneyland would be in the United States. So I would say food's cheaper. Hotel, you can do okay, but I think there's a big range of from luxury hotels to hostels to kind of anywhere in between. But I think you can stay in a pretty nice hotel for about what you'd stay in the U.S.
Okay, but it's not a cheap destination by any means.
No, but I would say the hotels are cheaper than like Singapore, for instance. Food is really reasonably priced, but the hotels are just insanely expensive. Hong Kong wasn't like that.
Okay. What would you recommend then? So you had a few days. If people are listening to this thinking, okay, I like the sound of this, where should they go?
I don't know that Hong Kong would be number one on my places to go on a vacation, unless you're into a few certain things. It hits a few marks for me. One, I like fashion, so the shopping, there's some really cool outlet stores, some luxury outlet stores that I enjoyed, but regular shopping is really expensive. So if you go to a luxury boutique there versus Spain, you're going to pay 30% more. There's no VAT tax back that you get in Hong Kong. The price is just really expensive. I think some of the outlet stores are worth it, but it's definitely not a place that you're going to go shopping like you would in France or in Europe. Getting a suit made was really, really fun, especially with my job, and I thought that was great. But a lot of people don't wear suits anymore, or they very rarely, so that probably doesn't appeal to everybody, but it appealed to me. I think that Disneyland is awesome there. So there's Hong Kong Disneyland. It's the smallest Disney park in the world. It's not super expensive. You could really see the whole thing if you pick a time where there's not crowds in a day. And there's some rides there that aren't anywhere else. And the main thing that's really awesome, especially if you have kids or daughters especially, is the world of Frozen. And it looks like Arendelle, with the castle and mountains and snow and the little town, and there's 2 Frozen rides in it, and there's a show, and it is really, really cool. And there's a Frozen ride in Walt Disney World in Florida, but this is way more immersive in that land, and I would think people who are just love Frozen or love Disney princess stuff would absolutely love that. There's a couple other really cool things there. There's Space Mountain, which most people are familiar with, but there it's called Hyperspace Mountain, and it was themed for Star Wars. And it was super, super cool because you're on the roller coaster. It's just in the dark, and you're like kind of dogfighting with stuff with other things that are on screens of like from Star Wars. There was an Iron Man ride that was themed to Hong Kong, so you're like following Iron Man through Hong Kong, and I thought that was really, really, really fun. The some Asian cultures are have different feelings about ghosts and things that we as Westerners think are cool. Like they have different culture when it comes to it. So they don't have a haunted mansion there the way that we would. They have what's called Mystic Manor, and it's basically an explorer's home that gets possessed. Their stuff gets possessed by some spirit or something, and everything moves around and stuff. But it's not really haunted. Next to that is a Explorers Club restaurant, which is designed to look like an old Explorers Club from like the colonial days, which I thought was fun. I really like the Disneyland aspect of it, and because that park was pretty reasonably priced and the food was priced, I was thinking it'd probably be for like a family of 4, even though the flights are pretty expensive to Hong Kong. You could probably go there to Disneyland for about what you could go to Orlando by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, especially if you're flexible with the flights, you pull the kids out of school for a week.
Yes, and this was perfect because it was January when I went. The weather was awesome. It was like sweater weather, like mid 60s. There's nobody at Disneyland. The 5 minutes to get on each ride, I would say, and it seemed like most of the people that were at Disneyland were girls taking selfies for their social media more than they were actually going on rides and stuff. And very few tourists at Disneyland. It was mostly locals. So yeah, that was actually really, really cool. I don't feel like there's a ton, and someone from Hong Kong's probably listening to this and it's like, well, you should have gone to this and you could have done this. I didn't really think there's a ton of like must-see tourist stuff. The Big Buddha is what they call it, which is a great name, but that's the giant bronze Buddha. It's kind of over by the airport. That, I mean, is cool, but you want to get there right when they open, because it could be hours trying to get on the gondola to get up to it. It's kind of expensive getting on the gondola, and it's one of those things. I like monuments and stuff, but after about 5 minutes of looking at it, I'm over it usually. And that's kind of the way I was with that. Like, okay, it's cool. You know, you walk around it, and I'm like, I'm ready to go back. And then by the time you wait for the gondola again, I mean, it takes almost the whole day to go to see the thing. And I don't know. It was okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some good viewpoints out there to look down on Hong Kong. We've all seen them on the famous images across the city. There are plenty of places. If you want to go and look down on Hong Kong, there are some cool places to do it. But what's the street level action like? What does it feel like? Is it one of those places where there's that kind of buzz and the smell of street food, or is it just kind of a civilized, clean, slightly quieter Asian city?
I'd say the second. I think there are like a couple night markets, but I don't think it's not like Taipei where that's such a huge thing. I didn't see a lot of street food. I saw a lot of little restaurants, but there probably are parts that have that. And back to kind of what you're saying earlier, you look at giant statues and stuff, and they're cool for a few minutes. I feel that same way about going up to the top of a building and looking around, or going up to some viewpoint and looking around. That's just not my thing. Like, and I know there's some really cool vantage points, like you said, of Hong Kong where you can go up and look at the city, but it's one of those things I'll go up for 2 seconds, and I feel like even when you take pictures from those things, they never do it justice the way that it looks in real life. So yeah, unless you see a tourist trying to take a selfie and falling off a cliff or something,
that could be a highlight. Yeah,
I just don't think it's going to be that exciting.
So doesn't have to be top 3, but if people are visiting, what are 3 things you'd say to people? Just kind of wander around, any restaurants? I mean, I remember getting the ferry across the bay a couple of times, and that seemed like great fun, because there's a kind of bubbling mass of ferries that never really stop, and you get on. It's almost like getting on a bus.
Yeah, I did end up not doing the ferry, and I ended up not going to Macau, which I would probably recommend people do, because I went to Macau as a kid and I just didn't really feel like messing with it, because Macau's, like, to me, it's just a giant casino city.
Yeah, basically.
So one thing I actually really love, but I don't know that other people would love it, is I thought the Nautical Museum was awesome. It was really, really cool. But I love nautical museums in general, and I love nautical history. But it was a really big museum. It was only a few dollars to get in. I thought it was really, really fascinating, because Hong Kong is such a history, because it's basically right there on the water. They're kind of split on the water, and they had tons of model ships. It was really well done. The Science Museum I thought was meh. The History Museum was, half of it, like I said, was pretty good. The other half wasn't very good. The Art Museum was meh. Like, it was this huge museum with hardly anything in it, and I just don't get that excited about calligraphy and pottery. I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't. Like,
no, it makes me want to jump off a bridge. I get it.
It's just not that exciting to me. And I know it's important stuff, but I could go through it. To me, a pottery and calligraphy museum is kind of like a modern art museum. I can walk through it about as fast as I can see things.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're seeing some really beautiful figurative painting or sculpture, whether it's Eastern or Western art, that you stop and really look at and get amazed at. I just didn't feel like it was that great. So the other thing is, kind of like you had talked about in the China episode, there's really not a lot of really old stuff that I saw. Like, I think in the name of being modernized, they've torn down so much. There's some parks and things, but you Google or in those museums, you see old pictures of Hong Kong. It just looks so awesome. And now it's been kind of replaced by a lot of soulless, new, modern stuff.
Does it feel as surveilled as mainland China? Does it feel like you're in China with that kind of oppressive government presence?
I didn't really feel that way, but I really didn't see very. I don't even remember seeing police out. I don't remember. I never saw any military people. It doesn't seem like there's, weird vans driving around or camera system. I'm sure there is that stuff, but if it is, it's pretty hidden. So yeah, I did not really, but I'm sure that stuff exists. Just like it does in Tokyo. There's a reason in some of these big eastern cities why there's almost no crime and you don't see a lot of presence of police and militaries because they've got the eye in the sky watching everything, which is fine because I'm not going to do anything wrong.
Okay, T, it sounds like Hong Kong, cool place to visit. It sounds like it hasn't kind of blown your socks off. It was fun. Glad you saw it, but yeah, not somewhere necessarily on the to do before you die list.
I think if you're into Disneyland, if you're a Disney person, it's totally worth checking it off your list. If you really like large Asian cities and that's something that you like to do, then it's a must see. But for the average traveler, I don't know that it's a must see. I stayed in Hong because Kong was too expensive.
Kong is expensive, yeah.
But I thought the hotel was nice. I stayed at the Conrad. The view is beautiful, right over the water. It really was a very fun trip, and I really enjoyed it. But I don't know for the average traveler. I would say you would be better off probably spending your money and time going to Tokyo. Yeah. If you want to experience Asia.
And jokes aside, the idea that half of it's Hong and half of it's Kong, Budapest in Hungary is actually that way. In that one side of the river is Buddha and one side is Pest. So
I know I forgot about that because I thought that was so. When I went to Budapest, I thought that was so strange.
Yeah, it's so funny. Hey, did you stay in London or Dun?
I don't remember. Oh, for London.
Come on.
Do you say in Birm or Ham?
Oh,
when you go back home.
Sorry, I just got over the flu. Don't make me laugh. I get this. I can have a coughing fit. But that's cool. It's good to hear all about it, and yeah, maybe hopefully, it's when you're traveling, you have your list of places. You just think, I have to get there. If I die without getting there, I'll be peed off.
Yes,
and then you have your list of places where you think, I really hope life takes me there because it sounds fun. Hong Kong's probably in that second bucket for me.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, you've already been.
Yeah, but I don't remember it. It doesn't count if you're 30. I feel like your travel CV should only begin at 21.
Yeah, I know. I've been to a lot of places as a kid too, and I don't remember much.
Exactly. I could probably tick it off on paper, but yeah. But I've actually got some travel coming up. Whether we will record another episode before I go or not, I'm not sure, but I'm off to Zurich in Switzerland. It's going to be a bit of a rush trip. I got 36 hours in Zurich. I'm going to Austria for 10 hours, and then I have a weekend in Munich. It's it's mainly work with a bit of fun tagged on the end. So, yeah, hopefully we can go through some of those places when I get back.
So the Swiss and the Austrians, two of the funniest people in the world.
And the Germans. Don't forget the Germans. They are hilarious. Yeah. No, especially the Swiss. I mean, but more or less every successful comedian ever has come out of Switzerland.
Yes. Yeah.
Such a good sense of irony. Maybe I'll go on my Switzerland rant one time, but I might just keep it to myself. But yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Well, they always say that because I went to Vienna last year, and I had like one really friendly person I met that was at a store, and I was like, "Where are you from? You can't be from here." And she's like, "I'm from Italy."
Yeah, adds up. Yeah. Yeah, the people in Switzerland, Austria, Germany are wonderful, but they're not very funny. That's a fair comment, isn't it? I used to live in Austria. I can say that.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a fun trip anyway, though. Sadly, not going anywhere I haven't been before, but I like all the places I'm going, and got some interesting work meetings lined up, which I don't want to discuss on the podcast, but yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah. Well, good luck. You'll do awesome.
Thank you. We'll speak in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Bye.